2015. Dear Drew, I've been in so much pain every second of the day. Other people can be happy. Other people can be in love. I have to be in pain because you decide to stick a needle in your arm like an idiot. Fuck you. For doing that to yourself, and for doing that to me, and to your parents and your friends. I have no one now. No one to love me, because you died. This excerpt was from a series of letters that I have titled, Dear Drew. It occurred to me that when going through these letters, the hardest ones to read again are the ones that have a lot of anger, because underneath those words is only sadness and hurt. Grief is a significant and normal part of our time on earth. So why is it so taboo? Grief swallowed my life and took away part of who I was. It took something from my core that I will never get back. For years, this was my normal. This was my destruction. I wrote these letters to my partner after his death from a heroin overdose on March 6, 2015. His name is Andrew Tyler Weston, and losing him was the most significant experience of grief and loss that I've ever been through. He was 24 years old. To me, this is the ideal way of honoring him, to share his name, and for others to know that although he was so much more, he did die from heroin, and not from a stroke, heart attack, or anything else. According to the United States Center of Disease Control, someone in the United States dies from an opioid-related overdose every 11 minutes. That means that while you're at this event today, 38 people will overdose and die. I wrote letters to Drew every day for months. It started as a way to still talk to him, connect with him, move through grief in a way I could survive. Because the truth is, I felt like I was drowning. Though it's not as quick as the real thing, and you have your friends and your family reaching out as far as they are able to, but it's not quite far enough to pull you out of the water. My grief manifested to physical pain that must be real because it felt like my heart had just been ripped from my chest and someone put a sandbag on me and I couldn't get up or move or breathe. My grief was waking up in the middle of the night from a hell-like night terror, only to remember that the hell actually started when I opened my eyes. I would scream and cry and rock myself back and forth while saying, "You're okay, you're safe. You're okay, you're safe." And my grief was bargaining with the voices in my head, saying that I would sacrifice years off of my life to have 10 more minutes with him. I've thought a lot about what grief really is and why it's so hard to deal with. Why do you repress and ignore? My belief is that grief is a cocktail of fear, uncertainty, and loneliness that is sometimes so overwhelming our bodies and minds are unable to process, so we repress. And when we actually may be able to process, there never really seems to be a good time, so we ignore. The uncertainty part of this cocktail brings questions that feel answerless. I took the questions that I had and had to somehow find answers to the arena where I was going to face the fear, the uncertainty, and the loneliness. I saw grief that rides shotgun with death as a domino effect. When we're in it, other things start to fall, even things we may not expect. Money, relationships, priorities. It may feel like the small parts of our lives are crashing down one by one, or maybe everything. Like everything. Just stops. But the world around us keeps moving. Cue the loneliness. But what if I told you there's another side of grief? That if we allowed ourselves to experience the emotions we have when grieving, we could tap into a powerful resilience far beyond what we thought was possible. Humans are resilient, and that resilience is a source of power. But when it comes to bereavement and grief, we can rarely think about the future and are often stuck and destroyed in our present and past. What I found connects grief and resilience is a sense of purpose. The therapist I was working with shortly after Drew's death helped me find my purpose. I built community. I was living in a suburb of Baltimore, Maryland at the time, and I thought for sure that there would be support groups for people who have lost someone to drugs or alcohol, but there weren't. According to the Baltimore City Health Department, in 2017, there were 761 drug and alcohol-related deaths. 692 of them were from opioids. That's over 90% of deaths. Because of this, I decided to start a chapter of GRASP, Grief Recovery After a Substance Passing, a national organization that holds meetings all around the country. This was one of my first sources of power and purpose that led me to resilience. Creating community and actually realizing I wasn't alone. And if I wanted help, maybe others wanted help too. I was moved by the surviving parents, partners, friends, and siblings that came to honor and grieve their loved one. One woman lost her partner. Another woman, her brother. One family lost both of their children. We all were and continue to be in different stages of our grief, resilience, and destruction. But we had others who knew our specific type of pain. We had each other. And I'm going to venture to say that most, if not everyone in this room right now, has felt the chains and knives of grief. To think that we all have not the same, but some experience of grief, that's pretty powerful. Rather than resist, I have found that embracing my grief and welcoming the wave that will inevitably come has led me to live a more profound life personally and professionally. As a social worker and mental health care provider, the grief I've experienced with Drew's type of death has given me the opportunity to be more empathetic and relatable to my clients who have been affected by substance use. This terrible event that once destroyed my life is now the foundation for my everyday resilience. It's made me want to find more profound ways of living, being, and thinking by having more gratitude and maybe a change in perception for the experiences I've had. So if we want to reframe our association of grief from destruction to resiliency, how do we do that? First, we must find what makes us feel powerful, important, and worthy. Drew found his power over addiction by sharing his story with his recovery community. You could say I may be doing the same. Making space for the stigmatized makes me feel resilient. Leading by example makes me feel powerful. I also found power in the support group, but the truth is, power and purpose is all around us when it comes to grief. But we only find it when we open up, allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and sit in the uncomfortable spot of I am struggling, I feel alone, and I am really, really sad. So start the conversation around grief, a real conversation. It will feel uncomfortable, like you are walking into a room of people who are just talking about you. And it will feel vulnerable, like you're allowing someone to take off armor you so carefully and intentionally put on. You may not feel like your space is safe enough to go to this place. That's okay. There's no rush. Grief is not tied to a timeline. But we cannot go above it or below it. We must go through. And we can allow ourselves the gift of leaving the stigma of talking about grief behind, because you are more powerful. And if you choose to be resilient in whatever way that may mean for you, you will see that there is space for healing, power, and change. And take it from me. Grieve as hard as you've loved. You deserve it. Honor it. Make the space for yourself and others to feel the raw and heartbreaking, so you can have the glorious and magnificent. July 27th, 2015. Dear Drew, it is amazing how so much tragedy can happen and people continue on. Humans are a lot of things, but in light of positivity, they are incredible. I am incredible. We were incredible. Thank you.